Welcome back to the Nancy Levin Show. There comes a moment when staying hidden starts to cost more than being seen ever could. You feel it. It's a kind of a pressure that builds from the inside. It's the sense that something in you is ready, even when your fear says otherwise. And yet, even in that moment of readiness, many of us still don't move. We scroll instead of post. We overthink instead of speak. We rewrite the same paragraph for the fourth time and tell ourselves we're almost there. We wait. We wait to feel ready. We wait to feel confident. We wait until we're certain that what we share will land perfectly. We want to make sure that we are received warmly, and we want to make sure that nothing is required of us to feel too vulnerable. Here's what I want you to know right here at the top of this episode. Readiness is a moving target. Every time you get close to it, it shifts. Because readiness is not a destination. Readiness is actually just a story that keeps you exactly where you are. So today we're going to look at that story. We're going to examine what is underneath it. And we're going to talk about what it actually takes to step into visibility. Not from a place of force, not from hustle or pressure, but from truth. Because here's what I know. Visibility comes from willingness. Willingness to be seen. Willingness to speak. Willingness to show up. And to do all of this even before you feel fully confident. This distinction between being ready and being willing is where our whole conversation begins. So let's slow this down and really look at it. So many people are waiting to feel confident before they put themselves out there. And that is a completely understandable impulse. Confidence feels like a prerequisite, like you need to have it before you act. But here's the thing. Confidence is not what gets you visible. Visibility is what builds your confidence. Confidence is not the prerequisite. In fact, it is the result, which means that if you are waiting for confidence to show up before you take action, you're waiting inside of a loop that never resolves. You can't think your way into confidence. You can't prepare your way into it. You can't optimize your bio one more time and suddenly feel confident. Confidence is built through action, through showing up, through doing the thing you're afraid to do and discovering on the other side of it that you survived. And in fact, you more than survived. So I want to be clear about something here. I'm not saying that this is simple. I'm not saying you just push through and the fear goes away. What I'm saying is that the architecture of confidence is built brick by brick. Through evidence, you give yourself that you can handle being seen. One post, one video, one honest conversation, one offer made out loud. Each one is a brick. And over time, those bricks become a foundation that no amount of self-doubt can fully shake. But you have to lay the first brick. So if you're someone who has a message, if you feel called toward speaking or writing or teaching or coaching, if there's something in you that keeps saying, I want to share this, then you're already standing at what I call the visibility edge. And the visibility edge is not a strategy problem. It is an identity threshold. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that. An identity threshold is the place where who you have been meets who you are becoming. And crossing it requires something specific. It requires you to release an old identity. The identity of the one who stays safe. The identity of the one who stays quiet. The one who stays unseen. The last piece is really important. Unseen. When you are not visible, you are not a target. No one can criticize you for what you haven't said. No one can misunderstand what you haven't shared. No one can project onto you what you haven't expressed. And for people who have built their identity around being good, being agreeable, being liked, staying unseen can feel like the only safe option, because visibility disrupts approval. The moment you speak your truth publicly, you become available for projection, for judgment, for misunderstanding. And most of us have spent a lifetime trying to avoid exactly those experiences. So when you say, I'm procrastinating, or I'm inconsistent, or I know what I need to do, but I'm just not doing it, I'm offering you a different reframe here. This is about self-protection. That behavior, the avoidance, the overthinking, the delay, it's not a character flaw. It is a protective strategy. It's one that has probably served you throughout your life. But here's the deal. Protection has a shelf life. And the question you have to sit with is the protection still serving you, or is it limiting you? Because the same strategies that once kept you safe are now keeping you small, and you have outgrown them. So we're going to go into a deeper layer of where this actually comes from. Visibility fear is often rooted in past experiences where it was not safe to be seen. And not just not safe to be seen, but not safe to draw attention to yourself. Maybe you were judged for being too much. Maybe you were dismissed when you spoke up. Maybe you were told directly or indirectly to tone it down, be quieter, be more appropriate, be less. And so you learned that visibility equals risk. And that learning lives in your body. It got wired into your nervous system. So when you go to post something, or record a video, or say out loud, this is what I offer, you feel it. The resistance, the tightness in your chest, the sudden urge to check your email instead, a compelling reason to reorganize your desktop. This is not sabotage. This is protection. The way through is to build safety in being seen, and we'll come back to exactly how to do that. But first, I want to give you a reframe that I think will help change how you relate to visibility entirely. Visibility is not about being fully exposed, but it is about being fully expressed. And here is the profound difference between those two things. Exposure feels raw, uncontained, like something being done to you, like you're stripped of your agency. Expression feels different. It feels intentional. It feels grounded. It feels self-led. When you're expressing yourself, you decide what you share. You decide how you share it. You decide the timing, the platform, and the pace. Visibility is not a flood, it is a choice. And when you understand it that way, you can allow your fear to shift. Because now the question is no longer, how do I stop being afraid of being seen? The question becomes, how do I expand my capacity to be fully expressed? And capacity is something you build, not by leaping off the edge, but by taking one step. and then one more, and discovering that each step is survivable. And not just survivable, but actually enlivening. Because here's what happens when you start letting yourself be expressed. You remember the truth of who you are, not the version of you that's been managing and minimizing, not the version of you that's been calculating how you're being received and perceived. The version of you that has something real to say, that has lived something worth sharing, that has a perspective that no one else on earth has. And visibility, true visibility, is the act of finally letting that version be known. If what we're talking about here today is resonating with you, if you feel yourself standing at that visibility edge, if you're feeling that pull to be seen and the fear that comes along with it, I want to tell you about something I created for this moment. It's called Reignite Your Spark. It is a free 5-day experience where you will begin reconnecting to your voice, your truth, and your next level expression. 5 days, 5 emails, 5 short videos with a workbook and prompts that will support you to reconnect with your desires. It's not about pushing you into visibility before you're ready. It's about helping you feel safe, grounded, and aligned as you step into it. You can do this at your own pace, in your own way. Join me at nancylevin.com/spark. Again, nancylevin.com/spark, and I will meet you in your inbox. Okay, we're going to dive back into the episode and we're going to talk about fear of failure. Because most people standing at the visibility edge, fear of failure is somewhere in the equation. But I want you to start noticing something. Fear of failure is rarely about outcome. It is about what you make the outcome mean. If I fail, it means I'm not as good as I thought. If I fail, it means I shouldn't have even tried. If I fail, people will see that I'm not who I say I am. The fear is not actually about failing. The fear is about what failure reveals or seems to reveal about you and what you make it mean. Because failure does not reveal anything about your worth or value. Failure simply reveals your edges. It shows you where your capacity hasn't caught up yet with your vision. It shows you what to refine, what to try differently, what to let go of. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the mechanism of growth. Think about any skill you've ever developed, any area of your life where you've built genuine competence. You didn't begin with mastery. You began with attempts. Some of those attempts work. Many of them didn't. And the ones that didn't, those are where the learning lived. And so what if instead of asking, what if I fail, you ask, what if failure is just proof that I'm in motion? What if it meant you are experimenting? You are expanding. Can you give yourself permission to experiment here? You're someone who tries things. And that is infinitely more valuable than someone who waits for a guarantee, because there are no guarantees. There is only the choice to act or the choice to wait. And every day you wait, you're making a choice. And I want you to make that choice consciously. Okay, let's talk about consistency. This is one of the most common struggles I hear. People say, I know I need to be more consistent. I know what to do, I just don't do it. I start strong and then I disappear. And there is actually a lot of self-judgment attached to that. And so I offer you this. Consistency is not a discipline problem. Consistency is a self-trust problem. I'm going to say that one more time. Consistency is a self-trust problem. If you trusted that your voice mattered, if you had bone deep certainty that your message had value, if you believed without reservation that you could handle whatever response came back at you, you would show up. Not because you had more discipline, but because showing up would feel as natural as breathing. And so the question is not, how do I become more consistent? The question is, how do I build more trust with myself? And here's the answer. It is both simple and profound. Self-trust is built through small, kept promises, not grand declarations, not massive overhauls, not launching everything at once and burning out 2 weeks later. Small, kept promises. Something like, I will share one thought this week. I will record one video this month. I will tell one person about what I do. And then you actually do it. Not when it's easy, not when you feel inspired, not when the lighting is perfect and your hair cooperates. When it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because every time you follow through, every time you say you'll do something and then actually do it, you send a signal to yourself. And that signal is, I can count on me. And that signal compounds. 10 instances of following through becomes 20. 20 becomes a track record. The track record becomes the foundation of genuine self-trust. Now, there's something that often gets in the way here. It's the belief that before you can show up consistently, you need to have figured out exactly what you're going to say. That you need the perfect message, or the perfect positioning, or the perfect niche. I hear this constantly, and I want to disrupt it. Your message is not a finished thing that you discover and then express. Your message is something that develops through expression. Clarity is the result of articulation, not a prerequisite for it, which means the more you speak, the more you write, the more you share, the clearer you become, not the other way around. Your message is alive. It grows as you grow. It refines as you speak. It deepens as you live. So your job is not to get it perfect. Your job is to get it out. So we have to talk about perfectionism here. Because if you are someone who gets stuck in the editing loop, who keeps refining and revising and rewriting, who's never quite satisfied enough to hit publish, I want to name what's actually happening. Perfectionism is not having high standards. At its core, perfectionism is fear of judgment, dressed up in the language of excellence. If it's perfect, I won't be criticized. If it's flawless, no one can find fault with it. If I get it just right, I'll be safe. But here's the thing. Perfect is not relatable. Perfect creates distance. It signals, I have it all figured out. I don't struggle. I don't doubt. I don't fumble. And when people encounter that kind of polish, that kind of seamless, untouchable presentation, they feel farther away from you, not closer. What creates connection is not perfection. What creates connection is authenticity. And authenticity is messy. It's evolving. It is the sentence you weren't sure about, but shared anyway. The truth you were nervous to say, but said anyway. The things that feel most vulnerable to share are often the things that land most deeply. Because your audience does not need a guru, they need a guide who has walked the road they are on, a guide who tells the truth about what the road is actually like. A guide who says, I know this part, come with me. So instead of asking, is this perfect? You simply need to ask, is this true? Truth resonates. Truth connects. Truth builds trust. And trust is the only currency that actually matters. So I invite you to sit with the question, who are you not serving by staying hidden? Because here's what I notice. When visibility becomes about you, your fear, your doubt, your perfectionism, you forget something essential. Your message is not just for you. There's someone out there right now who is exactly where you were. Before the insight you had, before the shift you made, before you figured out the thing you now know. And they were looking for someone who has walked that road. And they're not looking for a perfect teacher. They're looking for an honest one. Someone who says, I've been where you are and here's what I've learned. Your silence does not protect them. Your silence withholds from them. Visibility is not self-promotion. Visibility is an act of service. And when you start to feel the fear of being seen, I invite you to use this as an anchor. This is not about me. This is about them. Every service is stronger than fear. Every time. So let's bring this all the way home. We've talked about the visibility edge, the identity threshold, the difference between exposure and expression, the truth about fear, failure, perfectionism, and what consistency is actually built from. So now I want to give you something you can use, because there is a specific moment that matters most. And it's the moment before you show up, the moment before you hit publish or before you press record, before you say the thing out loud, the moment where everything happens. And in this moment, you have exactly one choice. You can contract or you can expand. Contraction looks like more editing, more overthinking, one more revision, suddenly remembering something else that you should do first. And expansion looks like a breath, a pause, a moment of grounding, and then moving forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing expansion in the presence of fear. So here's a practice I offer you. Before you show up in any form, pause. Place your hand somewhere on your body, your chest, your heart, wherever it feels right. Take one full breath and say out loud, it is safe for me to be seen. My voice matters. I am allowed to take up space. And then take action. Expand your capacity. Not when the fear disappears, but alongside the fear. Because the more you do this, the more you show up in spite of your fear, the more your nervous system updates its records. It can start to learn, I can be seen and be okay. And that is where freedom lives. And you do not need to become someone else to step into your own visibility. You simply need to become more of the truth of who you are. The truth of you who speaks, who shares, who says, I have something worth offering, and I'm done waiting for permission. I'm giving it to myself. That is the threshold, and you're already at it. The fact that you're here listening to this, sitting with these ideas, tells me that something in you is ready. Not because you have it all figured out, not because the fear is gone, but because the pull toward expression has gotten louder than the pull towards safety. And I invite you to trust that. If you want support as you take these steps, join me inside of Reignite Your Spark. 5 days, completely free, in your inbox. designed for this moment at nancylevin.com/spark. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being willing to show up for yourself. And thank you for being willing, even if you don't feel quite ready. I'll see you back here next week.